the new business that I'm starting is basically teaching the secrets of live streaming to people that need to be more confident and authentic on camera. So, with the rise of AI, I believe that soon people will basically be looking at everyone and if they're real or not. So, a live stream gathers people into a very immersive experience.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Walk 12 podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming on this year. Without further ado, I'm keeping the streak going. I've been interviewing a lot of people from that TV show that I still haven't yet spoken on because I can't release all the secrets yet. But this is, I think, my sixth interview, if I'm not mistaken, with someone that I met at the Blox. A lot of amazing people. And the person we have on today was actually one of the first people I met at the Blox. We met on the airport going to the Blox, actually. And so I was super excited that she wanted to hop on the show. And now we're here. Fast forward a couple months. We're finally here. So, Rose, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to get to know you, to get to meet you yet, tell us your quick elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, my elevator pitch. So my name is Rose Caiazzo. If we were in Italy, we'd say Caiazzo with the hand. But I'm also known as Jackson Hole Rose, which I had a syndicated radio show years ago and trademarked my name. But right now, I am starting a brand new business, which is exciting because I have been in the social media field for 17 years. So basically, before people believed me that social media was a real thing. And on the other business that I opened at the same time, I am a professional voice talent, an MC. I also do on camera type of things and had a syndicated radio show, as I mentioned before. So, right
Amazing.
now, the new business that I'm starting is basically teaching the secrets of live streaming to people that need to be more confident and authentic on camera. So, with the rise of AI, I believe that soon people will basically be looking at everyone and if they're real or not. So, a live stream gathers people into a very immersive experience and allows for others to really converse with you and connect with your audience. So, that's why I'm moving into that field.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And it's ironic because I teach AI, but I tell all the people all the time, like when I talk to them, it comes from a place of fear. And I'm not going to be the one that gets blindsided. So I'm going to stay in the front lines and learn how to use it and teach other people while I'm using it. But like I tell people all the time, like AI is to help streamline everything, it's to help make your life easier, not to do everything for you because you want to be lazy. Right? You still need to show up. And that's why I still do all my webinars, my workshops, everything, at least when I do it virtually on Zoom still because I mean there's probably a better platform than Zoom, but for the most part in Zoom because that live experience, something about that just creates a community, creates a frenzy, creates this whole experience that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise if you did something pre-recorded or did something that wasn't actually you. And so, but before we get into that good stuff, right, all the good stuff we got going on now, take us back in the time machine. What was Little Rose like growing up? Were you always this entrepreneur or social media, a very creative person, or was that something that you had to find along the way?
Actually, as a child, I was very much into acting, singing, dancing, theater, all those wonderful things because I always wanted to be on camera in addition to listening to the radio because I was an only child pretty much.
Mhm.
My only friend was the radio. And so, even though I'm from New York originally, I basically trained myself at 7 years old to speak like the people on the radio. So when people ask me now, wow, you're from New York, but you don't have an accent. And I say, well, this is the deal. So actually, I
Yeah.
was a very active kid. I always liked to be outside. I was creating plays. I would have people sit down. I'd make an audience happen and I would dance and sing and all the things. That's what I
So,
was like as a kid.
so for in New York, did you grow up in one of the boroughs? Did you grow up like upstate? Where in New York did you grow up?
I grew up on Long Island.
Really? No way. I would not have been able to tell at all.
My father was from Brooklyn, so we talked
Yeah.
like this all the time. And my mother was from Queens, so she kind of had this kind of accent. Now, remember,
Yeah.
I'm a voice talent, so I can recreate those types of voices. But I think I always felt like my parents talked wrong, so I wanted to learn how to talk right, and that's why the people on the radio were my friends.
Yeah. Okay. So you grew up an only child, and you use the radio kind of like a place to kind of seek comfort a little bit, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're growing up. So once you got to high school, what were your thoughts there? Were you planning on going to college and trying to get into radio and become a radio personality, or what was the game plan there? Did it stick with you as you started to go into your next phase of life?
Oh, did it ever? And the summer before ninth grade, I actually joined this theater program at high school, and I was super excited because I got the lead, and I was Maria, and I spoke in the Spanish accent. People thought I was Spanish. It was the craziest thing. And
Yeah.
then I entered ninth grade, so my new high school, and there was a woman there. I'll make her name Katie.
Katie. Okay.
And Katie was amazing. She was better than all of us. And that was a hard thing to swallow, especially as, a 13, 14-year old entering high school. So that's when a lot of my self doubt started. When this gal named Katie, she literally went out of high school and then went on Broadway. That's
Wow.
how good she was.
Sheesh. And so that was ninth grade year, right?
Well, she was there. She entered in my same year. So she was there for
Mm.
ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. She got all of the leads in all of the plays, which she should have. She was amazing. She was
Mhm.
also a dancer.
So
She
she
was
was
also a
multi-talented.
singer.
Yeah.
She still is. And so are her children, because I see them now on Facebook.
It runs in the family. So did you end up continuing to do theater and singing and dancing, or did you kind of put that on the back burner a little bit? Like, where did that take you? I know for me, I had a kind of similar experience, but just in basketball. And I know where it happened to me, where my freshman year of basketball, I had a guy starting over me, and he was one of those guys that made the team just because he was like super technical. Like he passed the ball with two hands, and fundamentally, like you're doing everything the coach wants you to do, right? But in terms of like an actual basketball player, I was in my own. I think I could make a very solid argument that I was way better than him, and he shouldn't have been studying over me. And but he did, which was super annoying. And then the whole season, I had him starting over me, and I started to get more and more play time towards the middle. We played our city rivals, and I was probably the main reason we won that game. Towards the end of the fourth quarter, I had like two steals within the last 2 minutes, and the game closing, the game leading. So we were down two, and I had shot the free throws to go up, had the layup to go up, and then two steals, and then the layups to close. I mean, the free throws to close out. So I did well that last game, and then my play just went downhill from there in terms of like my play time. So it really didn't make sense to me, but I wasn't gonna quit. By the time sophomore year came around, I was like, you know what? Honestly, screw basketball. And I made the team the same day that I made it. We had a scrimmage. 'Cause I didn't make it off the original cuts. Like they let me stay on, and at the scrimmage after I played, they were gonna let me know if I made it or not. But I pretty much made it. And then on the way on the bus before we actually took off, I just walked off, didn't say anything to anyone, and that was it for high school basketball. I never looked back. And then I started taking football more seriously. But yeah, I had a similar situation. I know how I ended up for me. I ended up stopped playing basketball completely. But I was I can't do anything about it now. So what ended up happening for you during that time period?
So for me, I did not give up. So I definitely didn't give up. I was kind of in her shadow, though, and that's okay. I mean, she was really that good. But I was entering college, and my parents said to me, "Now listen, we have your college all set up and ready to go." And I said, "Great, because I want to go to school for TV and radio." And they said, "Okay, well, in order for you to give, towards your college, we think you should have a scholarship. And there's this one that is for music. You can get a music scholarship." And I said, "Oh, okay, sure. What do I have to do?" And they said, "Well, you have to audition and sing music, And I said, "Oh, okay, I can do that." So I
Mm-hmm.
actually went to my high school instructor at the time, who, was like starry eyed about Katie.
Yeah.
And so I said to him, hey, I have this audition that I need to do to get into college. It's kind of important. Can you help me train? And he said, yeah, sure. I'll help you train. So in the mornings, I would come into school early in high school. I would go there way earlier than anyone else, and he would help me train. I think he helped me train for about a month. And I went and I did the audition. So remember, this is the audition to get into the college music program for a scholarship. And the woman stood there after I finished and she goes, well, you're in. I mean, you're amazing. And I just looked at her like, what? Because I had never had that type of, just kind of
Support,
support and
reassurance,
pushing and
yeah.
prodding, like, keep going, keep going. So I remember going back to the music director at high school and I went, rolling in there like, hey, guess what? I got the scholarship. And I'll never forget. He looked at me and he went like this. You did? Now, as
Wow.
a kid of what? 17, 18 at the time? Like, how do you take these types of things, right? So it was kind of tough for me. That's when a lot of my additional self-doubt started to kind of take a toll on me as well. But yes, I did go to school for TV and radio, but I did not actually finish my degree in that. I finished with public relations because when I was a junior, my father told me I would probably live out of a dumpster if I thought I would ever make anything of myself on TV or radio.
Wow. Pretty supportive cast. And so, and that led you to switching your major your junior year. And so for PR, that's something where you're dealing with a lot of big personalities. So was it like, all right, if I can't be the big personality, was your thought process like, I might as well be at least the person dealing with all of them and managing it? Like, what kind of led you towards more of a marketing type of route?
So it was interesting because I picked public relations because they told me lots of my classes could transfer over to that and I could get a job in PR. So I thought,
Hmm.
okay, great. Except when I graduated, I couldn't find any jobs in PR and no one would hire me because I graduated at a time where there weren't many jobs going on. So I got a job, of course, but not in PR. And then I realized that I was a tech whiz because at the time, this brand new computer program came out called Windows 3.1. And it was a white screen and it had all these little icons on it. And you used a mouse and you moved things around on the screen. So as soon as I saw it, I knew intuitively how to use it. But there were people older than me that were using, I don't know if you remember the blue screen, like WordPress
Hmm.
5.1, I want to say, or something like that. And people, it was almost like using a mainframe for your computer. And so there was this huge change going on. And after I graduated with my degree, my undergraduate degree in public relations, I actually went back to school for technological systems management for my master's degree.
Really? Okay. And then I'm assuming you found a way to turn that into business.
Mm-mm. I actually worked almost 11 years in the corporate world before I started my own businesses in '08.
Really? Okay, that's the part. I know you mentioned something about corporate. I forgot how long you were working. So you were working 11 years. I know
Yep.
for me, my original game plan was to get a job in corporate until I could figure something out. Remember my first internship? That was in high school, and that's what kind of drew me towards marketing. I was in the finance department, and we had a 3 week internship. The last day, the lady who was a CMO, she was in charge of all the seven of us high school interns. She had a connection with the high school internship program at our school, and the accounting department did their own thing. The finance department did absolutely nothing, and then the marketing department, they had their own little like luncheon, I guess you could say. And so I sat in on that, and that was probably like those 3 weeks were literally my only corporate experience that I had. I worked at K Jewelers, which is a like nationally, national company, but it's not really like corporate. And then I worked at a restaurant. So aside from those 3 weeks, my senior year of high school, towards that last second to last month, that was like my only experience in corporate at all. So like, what was your experience at all? Because I really don't know much about the actual experience on the inside.
Well, the interesting thing is that when I graduated from college for the first time, so my undergraduate degree, that's when I entered the corporate world. And I actually got my master's while I worked full time in the corporate world, which was not easy at the
Yeah.
time. And I was grateful that it was only 3 years, but it was one of the hardest 3 years of my life, believe me, even to this day. So my father was telling me that I should be an entrepreneur, and why would I go into the business world and let someone direct me around? And I said to him, Dad, I need to learn a little bit about, like what they do, how they do it, so I can be smarter and work smarter, not harder. So I was in the corporate world, and I actually never knew I was an entrepreneur until the very end of that 11-year stint. So what I did was I moved from every company every 2 to 3 years, and I would negotiate my salary to be $10,000 more in each one, because most of my mentors were men in the corporate world. So men mentored me, so I had no problem asking for raises, negotiating new contracts, this type of thing. And every position that I had, it was like I went in, it was a mess. I would fix it, and then I'd be like, I'm bored, I'm out. I got to go to the next company and do this, right? So I didn't realize till the very end, which actually almost towards the very end, so my second to last stint in corporate, there was something going on with the company that was kind of crazy, and they actually wrote lies into my review. And I don't know if anyone on your show has ever experienced something like that, but it is dirty, it is underhanded, and it does not feel good. So I had to go through that process in addition to a whole, you know, um, almost lawsuit happened with regards to sexual harassment at that corporate entity. And they gave me 6 months severance, and I left and got a new job and all that good stuff. But corporate at the end was doing this to me. I would talk about new ideas to people and be like, yeah, we should try this or this and that. And then the next day I'd hear someone else saying it was their own idea. The icing on the
Mm.
cake was the day that I found out the president found out my idea, called everyone into, an all hands meeting, and literally stood up there and said my idea as if it was his own. And I thought, what am I missing here? Why is no one respecting who I am, the creative mind that I am? Or, I just couldn't understand. But what I realized is that in some parts of corporate, it can be pretty backstabbing.
Mhm.
But I certainly did learn a lot in the corporate world until I opened my own business.
And that definitely, it teaches you a lot of lessons. It makes you definitely, because it's hard to not get cynical or skeptical of people. Like, you always want to assume that people have your best intention. People want to help and good, because the moment you get skeptical and cynical, it's a hard kind of like rut to kind of pull yourself out of. And so, but it's also it's tough because in spaces where, I mean, everyone wants that raise, everyone wants that promotion, everyone wants to be, the teacher's pet essentially, and everyone has a boss that they're trying to make look good. It can be very easy and to incentivize people to do a lot of underhanded tactics to work their way up the corporate ladder. And I, it's one of those things where I haven't had that personally happen, mainly because I haven't worked at a job where there was really promotion. I worked at a restaurant, so there's no real promotion at a restaurant, like for the most part. But it just like just be underappreciated. And one of my best friends works at the restaurant that I used to work at, and it's like a lot of her ideas just like either like just completely brushed aside or not paid attention to or not seem as if they're just like not good ideas, and it could be an awful feeling. So thank God that she's actually going to be leaving that place pretty soon. But it is a good place. It's just that, like everything, there's some cons that just doesn't make it worth it in the long run. And so I also find it. So what was your? I'm curious. What was your thought process when your dad told you to start a business, despite not telling you also that you're never gonna make it as like a radio TV personality? Which I don't know. And I don't know what the stats are, but like succeeding as a business owner for like longer than 3 to 5 years is like statistically almost impossible. It's like 5% of businesses stay in business longer than 5 years or something like that, depending on where you look. And like becoming a radio personality, I'm sure the chances are super slim as well. So like, it's one slim thing, one slim chance of success and another slim chance of success. What was your thought process when like your dad told you to become a business owner after, years after telling you that you're not going to make it with your original dream of becoming that big radio TV personality?
I think there was that self doubt. Like, how can I do that? I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I knew I was good at what I did, but I needed to get more experience under my belt on how to do it. So, I was very strategic about the jobs that I took, right? Because my first job after, graduating college was horrendous. I was what was called an expediter. Do you know what that is, John?
Mm-mm.
So back in the day, they used to have what's called expediters. I'm not sure if they still have them for today, but we used to work on mainframes, and they would say, okay, go into the computer system and look up this part number. So it was like part number 0015, all these weird numbers and letters. And they would say, and whatever the date says, make sure you call them on the phone, you call the people that are producing it and ask them what the date will be because we need it sooner. And that's what I did all day. And I remember thinking, why doesn't the other side, like, why doesn't the manufacturer have access to our system and just update the date? Why am I calling all these people and doing all of this excess work? Like, I was smart to that to begin. Because remember, I couldn't get a job in PR. So I got a job doing that first. And then from there, I got another job that was basically doing tech within a large, uh, well, they did veterinary, dental, and medical supplies. They were a distributor. And
Okay.
so I taught all the sales teams. And as a very young gal in my young 20s, they would have me travel to Reno and Michigan and all these other places so that I could teach the sales teams how to use the computer systems. I didn't even have my master's degree then yet. It was crazy.
Yeah, so you're in your early 20s, fresh, only with your bachelor's, and you're flying around to teach organizations how to use their computers,
They're sales teams,
their
right?
sales teams. And that's
Mm-hmm.
again very kind of like almost similar for me. So I got into real estate, and my first class I got asked to teach, and it was on social media, simply for the sole fact that I knew a thing or two just from growing up with it. Now, of course, social media was a lot more, and that technology is a lot more available, but it was something that was like it was, at least for me, there's a lot of imposter syndrome. Not a lot, a decent amount, a good handful amount. Because I was teaching people who are much more experienced, right? In this, at least in my case, it was real estate agents, much more experienced in the real estate world. Many years my senior, and I'm here in my early 20s. I think I was 20 exact, and I'm teaching all these people who are already selling houses in production, running their business. I've never sold a house before, fresh into real estate, fresh into like entrepreneurship because I never had a business while I was in high school or my little time in college. So like, I was brand new to everything, and I'm over here teaching this class. And I know for me, like after my second class, they're like, John, you should never ever do another one of these for free again. Like you need to be charging for this. But like in my head, it's like, how am I qualified to even charge for this? I haven't still yet to sell a house. Right? All you guys are in production already. So I know there's for me like a lot of imposter syndrome that I had to overcome. And not because like I wasn't confident in myself or what I was teaching, but like I just wasn't I didn't feel worthy of yet receiving any payment because I have yet to accomplish anything in my own right. And it took me a while to get over that and realize that they weren't coming for me to sell houses. They were coming to me to learn, in that case, in that time, social media. Now it's like AI, but at that time it was they were coming to me to learn social media because it was something that I knew that they didn't. they weren't coming to me for help with houses. They're coming to me for help with social media, which is an area that I was a couple steps ahead on. And so even though I didn't have the sales behind it, I have the experience with social media to back me. But it took me a while to get to that mindset. So like, what was it like for you traveling around to go teach sales teams how to use tech? Did you have like imposter syndrome because you were in your early 20s, or what was that
Hell
like?
no. Mm-mm.
Really?
No, I was good at what I did. And
Yeah.
you know what was great was that all the sales teams loved me. Like I would come
Really?
out there and they're like, Rose, you're so awesome, this and that. I would make like these colored, you know, like they would put them over their keyboard so they would know F6 meant, send the sale through. And F2 meant you could pop up a window that, gave you the supplies or whatever it was. I would give them cheat sheets, and I was such a great teacher for them that it
Mm-hmm.
was basically a pleasure to work with these sales teams in my home office in New York, in addition to these other places. It was so funny when I went to go pick up the rental car and they were like, "You're not 25." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I think I was 23."
Yeah.
And I said, "This is for my business though." And they were like, "Oh, okay, you can have it." I thought, okay, well, whichever, but I need the car. I need to get over there. But yeah, it was really a joy. But I think towards the end of the job, it wasn't as much as a joy because the management team was trying to direct me as to what to do, even though I knew it was the wrong thing to do. They didn't like me speaking up to say, but that's not what they need. I've spoken with the sales teams, they need this. And they'd be like, yeah, but you're going to do this instead. And that
Mm.
didn't bode well for me because I always wanted to be authentic. I always wanted to be truthful with the people I worked with. And it was hard. It was hard for me to have basically the management team sort of do a little whoop de woo, like turn on me. No, you're going to teach this. And it was like,
Mm.
oh, but that's not the right thing to do. Right.
Yeah. I would say so in those situations, because that applies to like beyond work, beyond business. I think that's like a something we face in life in general, right? It's like, do we do what we know is right versus do we do what we're told because we're being told? And like it could be hard at times, especially when your job is most likely going to be at stake, or your business most likely is going to be at stake. And if you choose to stick with your morals, it's like, well, good for you, but then also the the job might not be there at the end of it. And so how do you recommend, like, how did you sit, like, how did you, I guess, navigate your thoughts around that time, especially because I feel like nowadays it's a little different too now, because now uh I feel like job switching, job hopping and stuff like that in business like is a lot more popularized now. So it's like, I guess people, I don't know how people as a whole feel, but just the people I've spoken to, they're not so hard set. But like, even still, a lot of people tend to, I wouldn't say compromise their values, but like in a way almost, because the security and stability of the job, especially when they have a family, it's like, all right, what do I do here? So like, what were your thoughts?
My thoughts at the time were I experienced a long period of understanding people and where they were coming from, and really enjoying teaching people, having them learn from me and do better at their job. So it was the first start of my, what I didn't realize at the time, my inkling for consulting, right? I really
Mm-hmm.
was a consultant. Even when I first came out of college in that other job I had, I was teaching other people how to move things from WordPress blue screen to Windows 3.1, this white screen with all these icons on it, right? So it was essentially the same, but I had more clout. I was
Mm-hmm.
traveling. I had a business card. Like I was understanding these things about business that I didn't really realize, like what you could charge on a charge card, or what you do to implement a training plan, or what these things look like. And at that time, towards the end of that position, I had them pay a third of my schooling. So they paid a third of my master degree. I paid for a third. And I asked my father to pay for a third that I could pay him back once I graduated. And on my graduation day, he told me that the third was dissipated and that that was my gift.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So fast forward a little bit now to the point where you ended up starting in the entrepreneurship space. What was that transition like leaving corporate? Did you have to like reinvent yourself? I know a lot of people sometimes they adopt a lot of mindset that helps them grow and excel in the corporate in the W-2 space that sometimes hinder them when they become business owners and entrepreneurs. So like what was that transition like from working in corporate 11 years to now being, the head and face of everything that you're running?
Here's how it worked for me. So I was burning out in the corporate world hard. I was in burnout. I hated my job. I didn't want to do it anymore. I was so involved with the outdoors because I'm very outdoorsy. I like to hike, I bike, I paddleboard, I do all kinds of things. And so I had climbed a mountain in 2006 and it changed my life. And I said to the woman who was actually my guide, who I still know today and is my Facebook friend. And I
Mm-hmm.
said to her, "Oh my gosh, I want to do what you do." And she goes, "Oh, yeah?" And she laughed at me. Now, being a girl from New York that is, with all this, all these degrees and smart, and I'm telling you, I want to be a guide. And she's like, "Oh, okay." She laughed. I said, "No, I'm serious. I want to be a guide." And she said, "Okay, well, you only have to really do one thing." And I was like, "Really? What is it? Tell me. I need to know. Like, what's the secret?" And she was like, "Well, you just need to let go of money." And I was like, "All right, then I'll let go of money." And that next year, 2006 into 2007, I put my mind to it that I was going to sell almost everything I owned and join a guiding service. And that's what I did. I worked for Backroads, which is one of the top active travel guides and trips in the world. They do trips all over the world. And I worked for them for a short time. And then I fell in love with Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where I live now. And so I decided when they brought me here that I was going to stay. And that's when I opened my businesses in 2008.
Wow. So that's also a pretty interesting time to like open up a business, especially with the whole kind of like U.S. economy collapsing
That's right.
around you. So, what was that like? I know for me, starting my first business, I was in the pandemic. So, I mean, very different scenario, right? But like two, crisis nevertheless, right? Two very turbulent, very, unsure environments, unstable environments where like nobody knows what's going on or if we're gonna get out of this or what it's gonna look like when we get out of this. And so for me, it was just like the way I saw it was kind of like, well, if everyone's paused right now, a bunch of people taking unemployment, a bunch of people were just sitting on the couch. Some people took years off of school to figure things out because while everything was still online, um, virtual school was awful. There was no learning actually being taken place, and so a lot of people were just like on pause and they didn't really know what to do with themselves, so they just did anything to kill time. And so for me, I was like, well, worst case scenario, I start a business, everything fails when a pandemic resumes. I mean, the world resumes. Worst case scenario, I have a little bit of experience trying to run my own business under my belt, and I could just pick back up where everyone left off because most people weren't trying to take massive strides with themselves in personal development and start businesses. They were trying to make sure that them and their families are taken care of. And so for me, it was just like, what's the worst that could happen? And that was kind of my mindset when I got into entrepreneurship. I was like, you know what, screw college. I'm signing for my real estate university classes, get my license, and wherever that takes me, like I used that to start making money, start getting into real estate investing, which is what I originally wanted to get into. And then fast forward to about 3 years now. Didn't plan out anyway like I drew it up, but I'm glad I did take that original step during the pandemic because had I not, we wouldn't be talking today. And so it's like, what was that like for you at that time, kickstarting your own business?
Well, It started a little differently for me because remember, I sold everything I owned,
Mhm.
almost everything. I had some stuff in boxes that I was like, I can't get rid of this.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and I had a friend in New York hold on to it. She said her father had space in his attic, so I could put these boxes up there. So that's what I did because my mom didn't have any room for me to hold anything. They had moved
Mm.
like downsized to a condo. So like you can't keep anything here. I was like, okay. So I was in this really exciting part of my life because I'd quit my job in the corporate world. I was free. I went wherever they told me I was going to go. So originally they sent me to California. So picture this, New York gal in California. I'm super excited because I've never experienced California. I'm like, wow, this is exciting. I want to, do all the things. And the trips that they put me on there were Yosemite and also the wine trips, right? Because wine country is out that away. And then also John Muir Woods, which ends with the Golden Gate Bridge. So I did all of those tours, but the problem was every time I went into the park, the national park, I would get sick. And I had never been a person that got sick with any kind of, had no medical issues, nothing. And it was almost like a sign, right, that something else was supposed to happen. So I said to them, I'm not really sure what's happening, but I'm feeling very ill. And I don't know like what it is. The doctors can't say. And they said, all right, well, we'll move you to another place. But if you have any problems after that, like you're out. And I thought, oh, really? Like this is it? This is it. I was like, no, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Like wherever you send me, I'll love it. So they're like, all right, we decided we're sending you to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I said, great, that's awesome. Okay. Hang up the phone. Call my mom crying hysterical, like, "Wah!" You know why? Because I grew up a beach girl in Long Island
Mhm.
and I loved California because of the beach too. And then they were
Mhm.
going to send me to somewhere landlocked in the
Mhm.
middle of the States. And I thought, where the heck am I going? And I remember talking to my mom, and she said, stop crying, first of all. She said, Jackson Hole is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Your father and I went there, and you should just go there. And if you don't like the job or being there, then you can always come home. And she used this word home for New York, and I thought, okay, no, I'm trying it. Because I wanted to be anywhere but New York.
Bohem.
Yep. And so that's how that worked out. They sent me here and I worked for them another, 2 months. And then all my friends said, well, when are you coming back here? And I said, I'm not. I'm staying here. They were like, you're staying in Wyoming? I said, yes, I am. And that was the
That-
start of my opening up of my mind in what I really wanted to do.
That's
But
amazing.
not
And
as
so,
far as what I experienced several years ago about what I really, really wanted to do, full circle coming back to television.
so that was what, 08, 09?
Yep, '08.
Oh wait, so so 08, and then you started your business. Now fast forward a little bit to what you got going on now. So now you're planning another pivot in your life. And so, I mean, it seems like now you're super, you know, adaptable, right? New York, Cali. Now you're in Wyoming. You're outside, adventurous. You were in tech and social media long before everyone was really privy to it and even taking it seriously. And so now you're doing another pivot in your business. What's going through your mind now? Now that you have all this, not only business, but also corporate experience and life experience under your belt, what's it like now entering this new season of life that you're walking into?
I think for so long, because I opened both businesses at the same time in '08, that I felt that they were so different, right? Here I
Mm-hmm.
was, evangelizing social media on one hand, right? Here I am like telling everyone social media is going to be a thing. And they would look at me strangely and say, "Are you kidding? Facebook and my business, Rose? Are you serious?" And I'm like, "I'm serious." So a lot of people didn't believe me during that time, but I stuck with it, and that's why, I have the clout that I do, at least in this town or being in the social media field. But I also opened up the business on this end that was doing professional voiceover, where I also did event emceeing, where I also appeared on camera for commercials and these types of things. I also helped start the community radio station here. It's the only community radio station in the state of Wyoming. So I think for me, having all these things kind of swirl around me and keeping that peace that I was always told, you're not that good at it, or, you're
Mm.
not good enough. I met someone here in the first year and I told him I wanted to be a voice talent. And he said, because he was a voice talent, he was a SAG-AFTRA actor. So like he's in the union, like he's a major player. He's my mentor to this day in the voiceover field. And he said, all right. He said, I hear your voice and I get that a lot. Like, I have a great voice. Should I enter the voiceover field? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. But he believed in me for some reason. He said, you know what? Why don't you come over to my studio space and we'll record some stuff and we'll just see if anything sticks, and just see how you do. And I said, okay. So I went over there. He gave me some scripts. One of the scripts was an English accent. And so I did it with a light English accent. And he was like, what do you think? I was like, I think it sucks. And he said, what do you mean? He's like, I think you did really good. He's like, I'm actually going to send this in for a commercial. And I was like, really? Okay, well, whatever. So he sent my audition as a woman under his account. They were looking for, remember, a woman with an English accent. And the next day we received an email that said, we picked you. We picked your friend. Whoever she is, she's amazing. And I got the job. And my voiceover coach, Bob, just was floored, just as I was. And he said, if that's not a sign, I don't know what that is. I said, I guess so. So I invested in my own equipment. I invested in taking some lessons with regards to voiceover and what to do and how to do it. And things progressed from there.
Wow. And that sparked the whole Jackson Hole Rose? Is the
Well, I
trademark
helped
name?
started the community radio station here. So I had a
Yeah.
show there for 5 years called Local Lady Talk. And what I found out at the end of my run was that more men listened to it than women. I remember
Really?
one of my shows was called The Science of Kissing. So I talked about different things that people wouldn't normally talk about because I thought it was interesting too. But I also talked about how to throw a great party. I also interviewed the second judge that sat on the bench in Wyoming. So I had a mixture of things, but it always had to do about women. After I retired that show, I was asked to do a show on Jackson Hole Radio. And so I had a show there for 2 years called Drive Time with Rose. So I was on the radio in the afternoons when people were driving home from their commute. And I'd have
Mhm.
all these people call me, and that's when I was kind of like a, popular person in town. They're like, you're Rose? Like Rose from the radio? Because I do live in a small town. It's a little bit bigger
Yeah.
since COVID, but we're still considered a small town at 30K. But after that, I was offered a position as a syndicated radio host, which was basically the pinnacle of my career in radio. You can't really go much higher than that. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, those guys and I had to part ways. So I retired that show. And that's when I met someone in the TV industry. He'd been in the TV industry for 30 years. And he called me, he said, do you mind having a meeting with me? I said, sure, sure. So we're talking, me and this TV guy, right? Because I'm a
Mhm.
radio gal. And he said, I think you should be on TV. And I said, I think you're crazy. He went, no, I'm not crazy. Because, I'll speak my mind. I'll say what's what. And I said,
Yeah.
well, I'm a radio gal. You got the wrong gal. I'm not a TV gal. He goes, yes, you are. He's like, I've been watching you. He's like, and you would be great on TV. And I thought, who is this man that is telling me this, right? And he really put a fire under my rear end. He was going to give me an entire live streaming show. And it was going to be this big, massive thing. I was going to do all of these scripts for Jackson Hole Television, which was to launch several years ago. And instead, the gentleman died of two different cancers.
Wow.
So I never got my chance to do my live stream show, but it put a fire under me about coming full circle about what my dad said to me, about what my, theater coach and singing coach said to me in high school,
Mm.
about how I reacted in college when I was given a solo and I freaked out and told someone else to do it. All these things started coming full circle just with this one man telling me that I could have a live stream show. So although I don't have a live stream show right now, as you know, I did trademark my name as Jackson Hole Rose. I do live here. It's almost like I'm an influencer because when I walk around, a lot of people know me, but
Yeah.
online it's a very different animal. So um, just kind of piecing the things together. And since I love teaching people to be better business owners, that's where we come full circle with where I am with the live streaming secret circle.
Well, that's an amazing segue, Rose. I had a great time catching up with you, and time been flying. It's almost about to be an hour already. And I know you have this business that you're going to launch, and I know everyone listening, you're going to want to hear about it. So, like, where can we catch up with you? Where can we keep up with you? Where can we get the updates so that as soon as that's up, running, ready to go, or if it already is, where can we go to find it?
So you can find me everywhere on social media with the @ Jackson Hole Rose. And if you type that into Google, you'll find me. YouTube, you'll see me. Uh, Facebook, you'll find me just under the words social media, live streaming, Jackson Hole Rose. Type in those words and you'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the things.
Amazing. Nice and easy and uniform. Just how we like it. Now it's time for our lightning round. Same 5 questions I ask every single guest. Famous 5 questions. Question number 1 is, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Pick your battles.
What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Authenticity.
If you had to change someone's life, but you only had one book to give them, which book would you recommend?
Oh boy. I don't know if I could remember the title, but it definitely would have to do about the word perfectionism. Get rid of it.
What is the legacy you're working on leaving behind?
My YouTube channel.
And for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take?
Know you are worth it.
Amazing, Rose. Thank you so much for having on the show. Thanks again for reaching out after the blocks and catching up with us again. And I'm excited to see where everything takes off. It's always fun talking to people that are also like in marketing and into content creation and stuff. So super glad that we were able to connect and actually hop on the podcast and connect again. And I look forward to staying in touch. Thanks again for hopping on the show.
Thanks for having me. Cheers, guys.